Okay, welcome to the August 15, 2024 meeting of the Downtown Design Review Committee. My name is Kayla Copeland. I'm the Vice Chair of the committee. I'll be acting chair for today's meeting. The agenda and documents are located at http://okc.primegov.com/public/portal. You would then select Downtown Design Review Committee and then click on the agenda item, and the relevant documents will come up below that item. Please see the agenda for additional information regarding meeting procedures and the review process. If you're parked in the Sheridan Walker parking garage north of John Rex Elementary School or in the Art District parking garage south of City Hall, staff can provide a parking validation ticket for you. So Keith, will you please call roll?
Copeland.
Present.
Jones.
Here.
Brewer.
Here.
Schmid. Here. We have quorum.
Thank you. So first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. And that passes. Item number 3 are cases withdrawn, which there are none. Item number 4 are continuance requests, which there are none. Item number 5, consent docket, and there are none. Which brings us to item number 6, cases for individual consideration. Item A is DTCA-24-00022 at 820 Northwest 9th Street.
Good morning, Laura Griggs, Planning Department. First, I want to point out that you all received 2 separate emails with correspondence we had received from the Sosa neighborhood. One was dated August 11th, and the other was dated August the 12th. Additionally, at your places today on the Horseshoe, there were 2 pieces of correspondence that we received yesterday afternoon. And I had extra copies of those to provide to the neighborhood so that they were able to see that information. You might recall back in June at your meeting, we had a lot of discussion on this item, and it was continued. And so I summarized that in my staff report. That meeting was on June the 20th. And you continued the item so that staff could reach out to traffic management, and my direction was to obtain best management practices for alleys and determine the type and amount of traffic a 19-foot wide paved alley is designed to accommodate. The other item you continued it for was so that the applicant could discuss the issues of access from Northwest 9th Street, access from the alleyway, the placement of a parking lot on the corner, and the possibility of pulling the parking lot back from the corner with the neighborhood association. The applicant has met with the neighborhood association and submitted revised plans for the proposed parking lot, and you received those in your packet. Additionally, in your packet was the original layout if you wanted to compare the differences. The revision to the project include, but are not limited to, the parking lot is now proposed to be set back from the property line on North Francis Avenue, 29 feet. The parallel parking spaces adjacent to the alley have been deleted. The easternmost proposed driveway from the alley has been deleted. Cross-access between the proposed parking lot and the existing parking lot to the east has been added. The 2 large trees south of the existing house are being removed, and I might add, they had to be removed for the cross-access with the other parking lot. 72 spaces are now proposed, and originally there was 78 spaces. And 1 curb cut driveway access from Northwest 9th Street has been added. You might recall originally there was no access shown from 9th Street. I do want to point out that prior to the June meeting, and at the June meeting, several property owners in the area submitted written concerns and objections to this application. Additionally, several property owners spoke at the June meeting. So as you look through the staff report, you go all the way to the end. I left all the other information for discussion in case you still want to discuss those items. But in the staff report toward the end, I say comments based on revised submittal for 8/15/2024 DDRC meeting. Staff reached out to traffic management to ask them about best management practice for alleys, as well as the type and amount of traffic a 19-foot wide paved alley is designed to accommodate. I was advised that there are no best management practices for alleys, and while it is anticipated that alleys are used by people traveling to a driveway/garage with access from the alley, alleys are public and can be utilized by anyone, and that they did not have an anticipated volume of traffic that a 19-foot wide paved alley is designed for. And then, based on the input from the Neighborhood Association, I just went over the revisions that were made to the site plan, and I could repeat them again if you need to, but this is a duplication of that, just to clarify, these are the changes that they're proposing. And staff recommendation is the same as it was the last time, was to recommend approval. We have several residents in the audience from the neighborhood, and then we do have the applicant represented here.
Are there
Do you have any questions
Yeah.
of staff?
Any questions? No. Is there anybody, the applicant would like to speak?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Anthony Blatt with ADG Blatt on behalf of the owner, 920 West Main. Laura did a good job of going through kind of the history. Just to recap, at the end of the last meeting, there was a discussion about what were the items that were really being requested at that point, and there were 4. And the 4 items, one was access being requested by the neighbors to 9th Street to provide that vehicular access, to provide connectivity to the adjacent parking lot, the existing parking lot to the east, to remove one of the curb cuts that went to the alley. And there was also a lot of discussion about the fact that we had parking that was being accessed directly from the alley. We had parallel parking on the alley. And then there was pulling the parking lot back from the west boundary. The first 3, access to 9th, cross-access to the adjacent east parking lot, removing one of the access points onto the alley, those were all items that we were willing to concede to at the last meeting. And since then, we have incorporated all 3 of those into our plan. Plus, we have removed the parking from the alley so that it's no longer has individuals whose cars are immediately behind or adjacent to the alley. And we have made we've made the choice to reduce the number of parking spaces and pull the alley back, or pull the parking lot back from the western property line greater than that one originally platted residential lot. The intent was that we were going to meet all of the issues that were being addressed and come to a parking lot that was going to be win-win for both the owner and for the adjacent neighbors. We kept the landscaping on the north and west per the ordinance. We kept the landscaping on the south, which is not a requirement, but a benefit, both to the parking lot and to the alley and the adjacent property owners. We kept the islands with trees in the middle of the parking lot. And we did all of that and made our submission in late July. We did provide copies of the parking lot to the association. That at the same time that we submitted it to the city, I believe it was on July 22nd that we submitted that. We didn't have any more correspondence until we received the emails. We didn't have any written correspondence or specific objection until we received the emails on the 11th, 12th, and 12th. I feel like we have accommodated the requests that were made at the time of the meeting. I've had a conversation with individuals from St. Anthony's, and they've expressed to me why they are in support of the parking lot, and you have a letter that they have provided you as well. We feel like that the owner has the right to develop their property in accordance with the guidelines that are provided by Oklahoma City. So parking lots are allowed in DDRC, and we've specifically removed it from the corner because we know that that's a point of conversation and a point we have to come before you today. We believe we've got a good compromised design, and I provided responses to each of the questions that were provided in those letters, and happy to answer any of those that you might have or any other specific items that might be of interest to you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll open it to the audience if anybody would like to speak on this.
Good morning. We met a couple of months ago.
Could you go ahead and identify?
My name is Michael McCoy, and I represent the Neighborhood Association. I want to kind of go back through, obviously a continuance was issued then, and we set on the path of having multiple conversations. In fact, we have had multiple conversations with St. Anthony's. We have had multiple conversations with the gentleman that was appointed for the representative of St. Anthony's. Yes, and per the memorandum that I received this morning, it did state that we had a conversation to talk to the doctor, and the president of the association did. What they did at that meeting was kind of go over what the doctor wanted, and then we set up a meeting. Meeting was postponed a day or two, and then we had a meeting set up on a Saturday. We were at the church there at the neighborhood, and we waited an hour, and he didn't show up. And we didn't know until later that evening that he had a medical issue. We had conversations with the architect. In fact, the architect had family issues and kind of delayed the meetings with him. And I think we met on a Friday and presented a floor plan that we had created, or site plan that we created outlining the 4 issues, and I will go through those. But we received an email on Monday that he'd already revised his plan and submitted it in order to meet a deadline for submittal to this committee. So our opportunity to look at that and review it and make comments obviously was removed. So we let that go. We did up our attempts at conversation with both the doctor and the hospital representative after that. And yes, the hospital did issue a letter in support of that hospital. The representative of the hospital called and talked to the president of the association this morning, in fact, and he was not aware that we had not had a meeting with the doctor, and that kind of surprised him. So there was some miscommunication on their side also as a part of this. And yes, the architect is correct. We mentioned 4 issues back then. Obviously, landscape. Landscape is an issue, and let me just read the definition, and I really like this one. Provide visual screens and buffers that mitigate the impact of conflicting land uses to preserve the appearance, character of existing neighborhoods, which I can't think of a more appropriate definition for the issue that we have in front of us. The whole idea of the comment about the landscape is provide something that buffers a typical neighborhood development from the scale of a parking lot. That was it. The second point that we put on the table is we would like for the landscape to meet the requirements of St. Anthony's. If you guys have driven down Dewey or Walker, one of those two, you will see a considerable amount of effort has been put into their landscape. And that's kind of the scope and the scale that we were looking for. That would be well above what would be minimum. In fact, what is shown on their landscape plan is just the minimum. So we were looking for something in addition to that. The second item that we talked a lot about was the alley. And I think the issue is Yes, there are no definitions to the function and usage of an alley. However, that alley is in a 20-foot easement for the alley. Its width is only 19 feet. That alley was not designed for two-way traffic. The minimum Oklahoma City standard for two-way traffic is 26 foot face of curb to face of curb. We outlined multiple issues that we felt were detrimental to the neighborhood to the south because of the potential for increased traffic. We presented to the architect a site plan that showed the removal of all curb cuts from the property to the north of that alley to the south of the alley. We also showed a 50-foot setback. The next item, we're talking about residential lot. Obviously, we talked about that last time. It is not a requirement. It is a recommendation. And I will say again, the effort that it took to put a recommendation in the city zoning code ordinances, I should believe should be honored. It shouldn't be a recommendation, it should be required. And this project is a pure example of why that was recommended to be in place. The last issue we talked about was just the impact of that building on that neighborhood. The fact that that issue of that building original development, the neighborhood had requested that it not happen. It was an intrusion into what was a neighborhood fabric, and it brought with it commercial activity. We talked about the last time. That project as designed right now was approximately a third to a half of the parking that's required for a building of that size if it were built out of DTD1. The impact is, right now, the north side of Northwest 9th Street has been packed with employee parking from the day that project is opened until today. Additionally, the doctor revised the parking lot elements on the south side of his building and went from parallel to perpendicular, thus encroaching on the alleyway. So, what we got back in a response to our presentation, the landscape. There are two requirements for landscape when you're talking about a parking lot and a public right-of-way. And I deem the alley as a public right-of-way. It has to be deemed that if you're talking about adding traffic to that. The requirements are evergreen trees every 5 foot on center, or trees spaced 15 to 35 feet. There is an 80-foot section of that proposal that has absolutely no landscaping buffer. They are putting their a parking curb abutting the alley. So I look at that as the issues, and one of the most important issues that was put on the table by the neighborhood was the separation visually of that parking lot from that alleyway. That alleyway is intended because of design requirements for the Sosa Cottage District. It was intended to be the driveway for the people that abut that alleyway. If you go south and you look at all of the alleyways, it is the access, the driveway to every residence in that neighborhood. Additionally, we have issues. You put a garbage truck down there and that street is blocked off. You put down a city vehicle, whether it's an ambulance or a fire truck or a service vehicle. We have utilities running through that alleyway. Every time that's done, it's blocked. The problem being is it blocks access to our residents. We potentially can park in the back, but just imagine you own that house and you've been to the grocery store and you can't get access to your garage, your driveway, to deliver what you've just purchased. So I say the alleyway, yes, being a public right-of-way, but its original intention was to serve the neighborhood that abuts it. We talked about the differences in the DTD1 and the Cottage District. This example sets the tone for what's going to happen in the future. The residential lot. We are now at 29 feet. The development that is on the other side of Chartel and 9th Street, their average width is 33 feet, and their depth of the lot is 35 feet. They have a 3-foot easement in the front and a 3-foot easement in the back. There is absolutely no exterior landscape areas on that. You have three huge 4-story buildings that overwhelm that area. When you remember the original presentation by the architect, in fact, they had shown lot lines dividing that lot horizontally in the east-west direction. We have now reduced that lot to 29 feet. Now, there are developments. They're over there next to the apartment along the interstate. There are a couple of houses that have been built in the Sosa district that utilize the 25 feet, but they go from full front to back. I'm not saying that property can't be developed, but the doctor admitted that he was going to use that as a profit center. And what I see now with 29 feet, undevelopable. So we look at the issues. You know, the residential lot. I want to remind you again of the parking lot that is at 9th and Classen. Drive by that. It's got one car in it, and it's plugged into the charger. It's an electric car. That project was approved based upon information that was available at the time that process was done. Now, we're stuck with the parking lot that has no usage or function for anybody. It's on Classen. That means Classen street front property cannot be developed. There isn't a building that is appropriate in that neighborhood that could utilize the scale of that parking lot. But the city of Oklahoma City is stuck with that parking lot. I say that because, as you stated last time, you can only vote on what's in front of you. If you vote on something that shows 29 feet, the potential for that to happen is out of your control. You can't come back and say, wait a minute, you said you were going to do something and you never did. That's the reality of where we're at. What we had voiced our concerns is we want the phases put on the table. As part of the approval of the original phase 1 is outline the final usage of that property. Now, phase 3 was the development of a building. And yes, the doctor had a comment with our president about he wanted to develop that property, and I'll tell you why, because he spent too much money on that property to make it off of a parking lot. He has to do something. Well, we stated the last, excuse me, I'm going to cough at some point in time, please forgive me. We stated the last time around that when you take the square footage of the existing building and you take the square footage of the brand new building, that site will never have enough parking. All we've done is kick the can further down the road because the issue that's going to be on the table when that second property is built is going to be exactly the issue that's on the table now. What we haven't seen, and because the building owner is known that there was an issue with parking on Northwest 9th Street, there has been no actions or activity to delete that. That neighborhood is still faced with the issue of no parking in front of their residence. I would look at it like, why? If the neighborhood is stepping up and asking and saying it is a detriment to the function and usage of my residence, and it still exists. You have parking that's on the south side of that building that is still encroaching on that alleyway. We have people that are here that have had to call multiple times because delivery trucks were parked in their driveway. In fact, multiple times. Can you imagine coming home and you've got a delivery truck parked in your driveway? What's your control? Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be here, if there was somebody inside that truck. So I'm saying that the original application was faulty, didn't provide enough parking, and it has been a detriment to the neighborhood from the beginning. We are just pushing this down the road. You know, there's a practice in architecture that if you add to a building or you do a certain amount of remodel, you have to go back in and bring that building up to code, to the current standards. I'm saying we've got exactly the same opportunity here. If we're going to approve something, then let's approve something that takes care of the issues that were put on the table on the original building and not double those impact to the neighborhood from that point forward. Standard practice, we have an opportunity to do that. And additionally, as was said the last time, one of the areas that Sosa neighborhood has been concerned about is its abutment to DTD1. This is going to happen again. We're going to be faced with another situation. In fact, there are houses that are built that are in 6 and 7 figures that could have a convenience store built across the street, okay? We know that. You got to play with those cards. and the fight has been, how do we develop a buffer between these two districts? And right now, if you approve the plan as presented, we are doing nothing to set precedents for future development buffers between these two districts. Any questions?
I don't have any questions for you, but I do appreciate your feedback.
Thank you.
And your representation. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this?
Goodness.
If we could also hold our comments to 3 minutes, just for the sake of everybody's time and keeping us on schedule, and not repeat anything that's already been said, that would be appreciated. And then you could tell us your name and
Yeah.
and all
Hi,
of that.
my name's Michelle Kaufman. I'm at 809 Northwest 8th Street. So if you're looking at the map, my house is where the C and the T is, where it says project site. As Mike pointed out, I mean, it's already a bear to get through the alley, to get to my driveway, as he said, and I know it's repeating, but I have literally I had a guy from Staples fired because he parked in my driveway. I was late for a meeting. I asked him to move. He was like, there's nowhere else to park. Okay, not my problem. You're in my driveway, you know, and it's constant. It's not like delivery vehicles, paper shredders. This morning I was out there and the trash truck was trying to back up to pick up trash can, and there were patients that were parallel parked blocking garages so that they couldn't even get through. So the trashman had to physically get out, go get the trash can, and do it that way. And this is not gonna help. Adding the one, I mean, I appreciate you guys taking out the one curb cut, but keeping the one in there, I mean, it's already packed. It's packed. And all they're doing is they're going to be moving vehicles from a parking lot that's not even a real parking lot either, over to this parking lot when there's not even enough parking for the building that's there. There's a parking garage across the street that isn't utilized. Why? You know, that's what it's there for, to park. Tell all the employees to go park there. Put, you know, instead of putting a parking garage there, why don't you make some effort and redirect traffic that way? So that's it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Matthew Shepard. I'm at 813 Northwest 8th Street. I actually am Michelle's one house over neighbor. So we are directly, essentially, I would be where the J is on project. So you've heard from them. My only big issue is nothing has been done. Communication is stalled or very, very, very slow. We're a neighborhood, we're close. We come together when it really means to. That's kind of the point of, like, I love being close to neighbors because I am that person that makes pies or brings over fruit or, you know, that kind of thing. When you put a business like this in there, it's okay when the business and the businesses that are going in want to be a part of the community. They've made it very clear that that is not their intention. It's a business deal. And I get it. It's a business. It's kind of how life goes, right? Especially being downtown. However, their communication has been lacking. They haven't shown their face to us as a neighborhood association, or the communication has been super minimalistic. That's not aiding the coalition of the neighborhood working together, right? So that's only creating bad blood. Beyond the fact that his conversation earlier was that he followed and met the guidelines that were set. Like was said before, that wasn't the intention to just meet the basic standards. Also, let's address the fact that, Kayla, the water, how these plants would be watered was a question that was brought up by you, I believe. There's still no watering system on this thing. If you look downtown, and Bricktown is the perfect example, all those trees die and have to be replaced every 3 to 4 years because of a cold freeze or a heavy drought when you're looking at Bricktown. There is no watering system, and they actually took out half of the trees that they originally planned to put into the system. That's problematic. I back up to that, and one of my biggest issues was the heat wave that's going to come from the concrete or the pavement pad, whatever they choose to put in. The problem is they now just put all parking behind my house. So if you look at where the house is and their parking lot, those are all second-story patio homes. So none of us actually have a side yard. I have a side yard. The other three do not. So the only form of patio we have is off the back or the front of our house. The ones off the front are very small. The ones off the back are actually meant to be living spaces. That's going to increase the heat influx by 10 to 20 degrees depending on what any given time of year, right? None of what he said they were going to come with us and meet with us to work together to figure out an answer. They just created a plan. They've been given multiple plans that we created to make it better, and they just said, well, this is what we'll come to agreement. But yet none of them have shown their face to actually the neighborhood association. I have a problem with that because you can't work with us and hide behind the shadows, right? You're in a governing work of law. You work for the city. You want things to be up front. They're not being up front. So those are my issues that I'm seeing here, especially with the trees, because they took out half of the trees. And then you do have a whole strip where that whole strip on Francis has no trees. Their original plan had trees all the way around it. So I implore you to take a closer look at what is happening. And it's the big guys trying to pummel one over on the little guy, because we are a neighborhood association, but they might be a corporation. We have more people than they do. So that's why we're here asking for your help to come up with a conclusion so that we can better work together, because so far it's not really happening. So thank you. Have a good day.
I do have a quick question for staff, actually. Does this site and the adjacent properties, I would just want clarification on what the zoning is for this site currently.
So this entire area is DTD1, but there's 3 different DTD1 areas. Cottage is one area. North of 13th Street is another area, and those 2 areas have their own additional regulations in the design district. And then there's the main part of DTD1, which is the biggest part of DTD1. So you can see here where that crosshatched is, that is the area that is labeled cottage. And some of the dividing areas are roads, but some, like in this case, go down the alley.
And the reason I ask, thank you all for all of your comments and feedback. The reason I'm asking that is because I am taking a closer look at the landscaping plan and kind of thinking about all the things we talked about today. And because it's all DTD1, it doesn't necessarily mean there's like a use change, correct? So we're
Well,
not
let me
required to-
say, the uses that are allowed in the cottage of DTD1
Does,
is a much smaller list than what's allowed
okay.
north of the alley in this case.
Does it trigger the vegetated buffer zone or a fence requirement?
No.
No. Okay, that's what I'm getting at. Okay. Because they do meet the landscape requirements as shown, minus like the understanding of the irrigation. I think that is still a question. I'm also assuming I would like clarification on what the plants are. I'm assuming it's the same planting palette that was presented with the previous package. I'm using the same like it says medium evergreen shrub, and previously that was a dwarf wax myrtle. I'm assuming that's the same. it's the same symbol, everything. So assuming that's the same. Okay.
It's on their last page. They're
The-
showing Shumard Oaks, Lace Park Elms, and
I see
Dwarf
that,
Max
yeah.
Wardle.
Yeah. Is that on the new one? Okay, it is. Thank you.
So if I could make a couple of
Okay.
comments. One of the frustrations that I see 5 years is there's legitimate concerns and frustrations from individuals who see development or growth occurring in their area. And I get it, but I also think that we sometimes forget the role and responsibility of this group. They're set out in the guidelines and they were adopted by the city council. If we need to do more or different, then what we need to do is go back to the council and request modifications and updates. When you look at the requirements that are required by this body, they clearly have met those. And I appreciate the comments providing for clarification. I also hear you loud and clear because we've heard it from other neighborhoods and other groups. Unfortunately, we're not that place. The place where you need to go is to the city and say, look, if you're going to develop and grow this community, then you got to do some things. One, you got to have better enforcement of the rules that you have in place so the Staples car does not park in my driveway. Second is that if we're wanting to ensure that we create landscaping that will survive, there has got to be better requirements on how that is supposed to happen. And I just want to be upfront with that. It's very frustrating, but there is, unfortunately, for this entity, a requirement that we look at the rules and regulations and ensure that any entity that is developing meets those. And in this case, based on the compilation of the report from staff, they do. But I also want to lift up is that we as a community have to push back with the city council that we got to do better. And we got to do more than what you currently have on the books, because I hear it loud and clear, the frustration, but unfortunately, at least this entity can't do very much. But as a citizen, I can, and I plan to. If there are not any further comments, I'll make a motion that we approve the application. Oh, sorry.
Can I suggest you ask if there's anybody else that wants to speak? And then if there isn't, then you can close that,
Sure.
because somebody started to raise their hand.
Absolutely. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this?
You know, this is not a sign of a fight. I appreciate your comments. But what I'm looking at are 6 intelligent individuals. And you know the issues. And you know there's a separation of what's proposed versus what the neighborhood wants. And we're not that far apart. We get rid of a curb cut in the alley. We increase the landscaping so it spans the entire distance of that alley. We make sure that the landscape that's put in place is per St. Anthony standards. Yes, we put a proposal together that showed putting a curb cut on Northwest 9th. We want it as far east as we can get it so that it stays within the traffic pattern of the hospital and outside of as much of residential traffic as possible. The idea of working this together is exactly where we wanted to end up. However, scheduling other people that were outside our control didn't give us that opportunity. But you've heard this before. I'm just saying you have the capability to encourage the two parties to come together and come up with something that is acceptable. And again, remove a curb cut. You've got a curb cut on 9th Street. That takes the parking lot and removes the traffic that would be implied and added to that. Take the landscape buffer and go full east and west. And put landscape with the watering system in there that's going to be substantial enough to be a benefit to the neighborhood, just like what St. Anthony's has done. I believe that's in your prerogative to do. I believe that you can say, I think you guys are close, but you need to keep at it until you get there. We have not had a conversation with the owner. Yes, we had one individual have a conversation, and we had the neighborhood association show up to one where it wasn't there. So we have not had conversations with the architect because we were told that the deadline for submittal had passed and we were stuck. I get it. Things happen in life. I feel like crap. I don't want to be here either. But I do say, inside your capabilities is to request that the two parties come to an agreement that works for everybody. Give us an opportunity to meet with the doctor as an association and talk about the priorities in life. We would also like to see him making a positive step forward to the neighborhood, and he's not. So give us an opportunity for that to happen. Thank you.
If I could respond, I agree. There is what's called a compliance and accommodation. Clearly, they're in compliance. We can listen to and have the representatives from the applicant speak if there is the opportunity and the possibility of accommodating the requests that are being made. We, of course, are open to that. And if they say that they would like to have another month in order to do so, then, of course, that is something that we here would be reasonably, I think, wanting to do. I don't know. So if the applicant would like to speak to that.
No, we don't want to continue this again. We continued at 60 days to address the 4 issues at that time. We are the advocates on behalf of the owner. There are many times in which owners say, we're going to hire an architect and we want you to do the work because that's not our daily business, that's not our expertise. We were charged to have those conversations. The owner did have one meeting. He was not able to have the second one, but we were the ones having the conversations in person, by email, by text, by phone call. We have added a landscape buffer along the alleyway because we think it's a benefit to the project. We think it's a benefit to the neighbors. We put shade trees in because we feel like tree canopy is what's really needed here, not low growth landscaping. This is not a St. Anthony's project. St. Anthony's landscaping standards are not something that we would be able to commit to on behalf of the owner. They need something that they can maintain. When it comes to watering, we want the landscaping to survive as well. We're going to make the watering requirements consistent with the requirements of Oklahoma City. There are ways, if landscaping is not maintenance, that somebody can make an appeal to the city. But doing things in excess of what the ordinance requires is not something we want to commit to at this time. We are exceeding the landscaping requirement for this property, and we are providing a smaller parking lot to accommodate some of the conversations that occurred. We feel like we've met. It's a compromise on both sides, I realize, but what we believe we have is a very good solution.
Hey, Tony, if you don't mind, could I ask you a question, please? Yes, ma'am. The curb cut and parking lot entrance or exit adjacent to the alleyway,
Yes.
is that required for the circulation and number of parking spaces, or is that just a convenience?
What we're trying to do is make sure, we feel like a curb cut on 9th Street is going to really be a detriment to 9th Street. That was a request. So we took one of the curb cuts out of the alley and we put it on 9th. We don't think we need 2 on the alley and 1 on 9th, but we do think so that there can be better circulation and the cars can exit, that 2 curb cuts is going to be good out of this parking lot. We did provide the connectivity into the adjacent parking lot at the request. We're happy to close off that connectivity, but apparently it's something that is for the good of the neighbors as well for that to happen.
Yeah, because one of the requests I heard today, well, I heard 2 requests from the neighborhood for design change-wise. The removal of the curb cut in the alleyway and more landscaping, basically amp up the landscaping.
Right.
And that's why I was asking about the curb cut, because that also would get the owner more parking spaces potentially too.
It could, we just don't think the one onto 9th Street is going to be sufficient. We'd really like to. The alley is,
other one that goes already onto 9th, right? So this parking lot has 4 connections back to the public right of way.
Once-
2 off of 9th, and then 2 off of the alley because of the cross use.
When we made the cross-access, yes. But this parking lot, so the building has its parking lot, it has its patients. This parking lot is intended really to be it's not intended to be an expansion of patients. It's intended to be for use by St. Anthony's. That's what they're intending to use it for. So we do have 4 access points. We would prefer to keep in this new parking lot an access point off of 9th and an access point off of the alley. I should say also, we did agree, and it's in our proposal, to fix the 90-degree parking off of the back of the existing, because that was the very first thing that came up in the conversation, was that's incorrect and it needs to be fixed. So we've shown that to address that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I completely agree with you, Gary, which is it's our job to make sure the project complies. But I also, from where I stand, I see a committed neighborhood association that, from the information I have received, has on multiple occasions expressed, we're not vehemently against the parking lot, but if you have to do it, we would like you to be neighborly. And in my opinion, they have expressed in 2 meetings in front of me their desire to try and be neighborly and work with St. Anthony's and the doctor. And in 2 meetings, we have not seen St. Anthony's and we've not seen the doctor. And the information that I have received is the neighborhood hasn't seen St. Anthony's and hasn't seen the doctor. And so I would lean towards allowing 1 more month to see if this can happen. But I also recognize that the parking lot does comply generally-ish, even if we don't agree with some of the components of it. And so I struggle with just giving them a yes when they're not here to actually ask for it. And I'm slightly confused because the doctor's building it for Saints, but he wants to build a building on the parking lot. Saints has said they're in support of the parking lot, but in the letter they didn't say they need the parking lot for their operations. So it's just the story of why the parking lot needs to exist is still muddy to me. And it just doesn't feel right yet to me. And I don't know how to say that otherwise.
I actually agree with Eric. You put the word, like, I've been thinking about how to say that. Where I do agree, I see the compliance, I see it in the landscape, I see it in the layout, I see it in the usage, everything aligns, but except the neighbors, you know? I think that is an important piece that is missing. My also, the other hesitation I have is we've already done 2 months, and I feel like that was a lot of time to get that done. And that's where I'm also kind of conflicted, because I feel like we have allowed that. That's kind of where I stand on this too. I'm also unsure right now.
So I totally get it. And that's why I gave the speech about, I think some of the issues that you're raising are bigger than just this group, that it is about a city that is growing and expanding and is starting to see the pains of getting it right. And I just feel that we as a community need to remind our city council, if that is what we're wanting to do, then you've got to do a better job in putting in place regulations and requirements that meet the moment. And I just think that's where the conversation is. So I agree that we would hope that you could come to an agreement, but again, our job is to ensure that compliance is being made, and I think it does. So I'm going to continue to make a motion that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District Zoning Ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report.
Mariana Sador, approve it.
And staff's going to make a suggestion that you base your motion on the revised site plan that was in your packet and that was discussed today.
So please note that the approval of the application on the basis that the revised site plan complies. Thank you.
Yeah, just so that we're really clear on which one you're talking about. It's not the original one.
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura.
Mariana Sarur, the second.
Okay, so we have a 2-2 vote. The motion was to approve, and I will look to legal, because I believe if someone wants to make the opposite motion, they could entertain the opposite motion, am I correct?
Or they could move to continue.
They could move to continue, okay. Typically, we require the applicant to agree to the continuance, so,
There's no legal requirement that they agree to a continuance.
okay, we don't normally hear that from legal, but, okay. So does the committee want to discuss this, or
Oh.
do you want to have the applicant come up?
I would like to have the, excuse me, sorry. I would like the applicant to speak to the continuance.
What is the issue that would move the needle towards acceptance? Is that the additional extent of landscaping to the east? Because there's a section of the alleyway that does not have landscaping adjacent to it. And I realize that there is not a requirement for landscaping adjacent to the alley. The owner has the right to access the alley in any manner that DTD1 would allow, so they could access it with zero landscaping adjacent to the alley. So is removal of a curb cut and no landscaping on the alley a preference? Is additional landscaping along the alley and keeping the curb cut the preference? What is the item that moves the needle? You know, irrigation on trees, it is in compliance. I don't believe that putting in a subgrade irrigation system on a parking lot that, I'm not sure that that's the best use of funds. So I'm curious, what is moving the needle for approval today?
So, for myself, I hear the need for like.
And sorry, Katie, can you put the new site plan up, please?
For
I apologize.
myself, I hear the need just for more communication about specifically two things: the access to the alleyway, if there's a curb cut or not, and then what that landscaping looks like. Only because it's adjacent to the residence is where I'm at. You're right, it is in compliance right now with the code, what you're showing. You're actually 1 point over. You're an overachiever. But I think that because of the continuance we gave before, we're giving more time for that collaboration to occur, and that was per the neighborhood's request, and now the neighborhood doesn't feel like they achieved that.
The collaboration, there was a lot of
Okay.
communication from our office.
Okay.
There were, I understand, multiple conversations with St. Anthony's. With how many individuals, I don't know because we weren't there. I understand there was a face-to-face sit-down meeting with the doctor and with one individual from the Sosa neighborhood. Again, that was a shock to us when we heard that occurred, because we would have liked to have been there, because we're representing what he is relaying as he is committing to. But he did have that one. The second one, great. We realized the doctor had an issue and he was not able to. We gave these plans on the 22nd of July, and we did not receive comment until the 11th of August, on the week of the meeting. That was something we could have had conversations, and like the last time, conversations happened and we brought a new plan in. We didn't have the opportunity to do that because we didn't receive comments. So again, if extension of the landscaping from its current alignment along the alleyway to the easternmost boundary of the property is what would move the needle, and I realize there's a certain amount of width that's going to be required so we can get those shade trees, that's something that we can, I believe that that's something that we could concede to in this meeting without having to go back to the owner. Removing a curb cut is something that I feel like the owner has a right to at least hear. And I also feel like if we remove that particular curb cut, then we are going to put all of this parking on tonight. And the individuals who have not yet developed their properties on the other side of Ninth are going to be frustrated with that situation. If they don't go out on Ninth, they will go out the eastern connectivity, and they will not turn back through the parking lot. They will go right back down to the alley, and they're right back into the current exit that the owners are objecting to. So if we remove the curb cut, and you know, if it's one of those items that it's yes, if you remove the curb cut today, and you would allow us to have that conversation with the owner and work with staff to make that happen, I will at least, I'll go ask that question. But I feel like if I believe that removing the curb cut is a detriment to the neighborhood. It's not going to improve the neighborhood.
Normally, you hear me say 1 month, assuming everybody agrees to a continuance. You normally hear me say 1 month makes it really difficult because I need everything by next Tuesday. However, in August, we have 5 Thursdays. So I have an extra week, as well as the issues that we've discussed, which, you know, I don't know if there were 4 or 5. The issues are a handful of issues, and I, as the staff person that would have to prepare the staff report, feel if we get it by the beginning of that first week in September, we could get it back on your September agenda. So if everybody agrees to a 30 days, we could make it work.
The reason why I am asking not to continue, based on precedent, there were 4 items last time that we were asked to address. We addressed all 4 fully, plus we addressed the 5th item of removing parking out of the alley, which was also requested. The things that are now being brought up as we want to discuss them are landscaping, removing another curb cut out of the alley. Originally there was 2, there was a request to go to 1, now there's a request to go to 0. And watering, we will water according to the guidelines. Landscaping, if it's adding landscaping trees, not shrubs, heavy, intense, maintenance-laden landscaping that you see on corporate campuses, which I don't believe is in the best interest of anybody. Adding landscaping, I'll concede to today. Extending the landscaping to the east, to the boundary of the proposed parking lot, I'll concede to today. Those 2 I can concede. If that would move the needle and allow us to move this forward, because I do believe the owner has a right to develop his property and have access to the alley, which we've provided. Yeah. We could remove the connectivity to the existing parking lot, and then we just have 1 access point, and I can concede to that today. We didn't ask for that. Originally, it wasn't in our plan because we wanted to keep those 2 large trees. So I could remove the connectivity, and I could extend the parking, the landscaping. I'd like to be able to have some kind of movement today because we feel like the last 60 days were an effort in us fully meeting the requests that were asked, only to have the mark moved with new requests today.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Thank you. Yes.
So one thing that Mr. Black kept saying is that the owner has the right to create an entrance on the alleyway because you know, he has a right to access it. He already has that right to access it where the building is at, right? If they're going to do that continuation, there's that point right there. I don't understand why that wouldn't be sufficient enough, because one, you can access it, I mean, unfortunately through the alley already, but it's a very small amount. You have access on 9th, and then you would have the other access on 9th. That's 3 entrances, which to me is sufficient. I mean, if you look at the parking lot that's right across from like the Starbucks, Chick-fil-A area of St. Anthony's, they have 1 access going into that whole parking lot, not 2. And I mean, there's like huge roads on both sides, big thoroughways or whatever they're called, and they only have that 1 access. So we have 3 accesses already. I don't understand why there needs to be a 4th.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think my understanding from hearing from the neighborhood is the concern is the alley access in the southwest corner of the property and some sort of notional idea of a landscape buffer on the southeast corner of the revised plan. And it seems like they feel like this is 90% of the way there, and they're asking you to come 10% more. And I think I heard you say you're amenable to moving that direction, but you need to talk to the owner before doing that?
What I'd like to do is, if extending the landscaping is sufficient, and it can be voted on today, great. If removing that east parking curb cut, the west curb cut to the alley is the issue that is going to be, it's approved today. If I come back to staff and say that curb cut has been removed, I'll go ask that question, but I would like it to be approval contingent upon, so that I can get a firm, but again, I just want to voice from the standpoint of a reviewing body, we're going to put all this on 9th, and although we're not going to affect the individuals who directly are adjacent to the south side of the alley, we are going to affect directly the individuals who are in the neighborhood.
Right,
with
but
that.
9th is a road designed to take car traffic
Correct. Absolutely.
stronger than an alley. And so I think the neighborhood is just trying to say, let's take cars to where cars are intentionally designed for larger traffic counts.
And so,
Like, I can get on board with a conditional approval saying, increase the landscaping southeast and remove the curb cut on the southwest, and you go talk to your owner, and if he says no, then you gotta come back. I can get on board with that to keep the process, because I think I'm hearing that's generally the tone that is acceptable.
I'll work with them on that.
Okay,
I can get there.
I can too. We do have one more person in the audience that would like to talk.
Good morning. My name is Lee Morgan, and I live at 829 Northwest 7th Street. And I just, hearing the discussion today, I didn't want to speak and my voice will shake. But I felt compelled to say that I really appreciated what Mr. Jones said about it. I mean, the city does need to change, and we do need to do something. But I really appreciated what you, Mr. Schmidt, and you, Ms. Copeland, said about communication and neighbors working together. And we really are just asking for some neighborliness. I personally don't believe that a parking lot in the middle of a neighborhood is the best use of that land for the neighbors, but I also did not like the blue metal building that had been a gym that was there. So, I mean, there's a lot of room on either side for things to be better. And I just wanted to say that I appreciated you understanding that we just wanted the communication and the opportunity to try to be neighbors about the spaces in the city that we're sharing. Thank you.
So to my fellow members, I'm willing to support as a compromise a motion with conditions. Again, tell me what they are and I'll get behind it.
I would say that the condition would be to remove the curb cut off the alleyway and increase the landscape buffer along the south edge with trees.
Okay. You want to make the motion?
Can I double check?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so in looking at this, now that this is up, when you're saying remove the alley curb cut, thanks, Katie, which is in the southwest corner of that site.
Correct.
Okay, and then obviously they'd be reworking that, but then you want them to increase the landscaping along the south edge of the project next to the alley. Do you want to give them more direction than that? Do you want them to extend that landscape area that they've got in the middle? Do you want, or do you want this to be flexible enough so that they just work with us? I was just trying to figure out the extent of where you want to increase that landscaping.
Sure. Did you have something to say, Tony? Were you going to give us an offer?
I believe I have to give you 5 feet so that I can get trees in it.
Right.
If I give you 5 feet, I can still keep 2 double-loaded parking because I've got a 5-foot boundary on the northern edge of this that's not actually required
Okay.
edge. So I would extend a 5-foot boundary. I'd have a minimum 5-foot boundary along the entire south edge of the property, and I will make a call to see if we can remove the eastern or the western curb cut into the alley.
Okay.
But the intent would be that we would still get 90-degree parking, double loaded for the full length of the south side of the property.
Great. I think it would be great to keep, I like the spacing of your trees. That's for healthy tree growth. I think what, like if you can increase it with that same spacing, that way it also
That'd be
is
fine.
matching
Yeah.
ninth would be my suggestion.
We don't want it to be so dense that that they don't have the opportunity to make a canopy.
Yeah, because you already have them spaced where you're overlapping the 75-foot requirement twice. So I think the spacing is appropriate for tree growth and health.
Okay, so we're talking about 1, remove the curb cut in the southwest portion of the site to the alley. 2, along the entire south edge of the proposed parking lot next to the alley, minimum 5-foot wide landscape buffer, increase the landscaping utilizing the same species. I believe that's what I
Correct.
heard you say.
Species and spacing.
And spacing, okay.
Yeah. I think what that does for the neighborhood, it'll give you a really beautiful array of trees along your alleyway, which will also provide one day, it's a generational thing with trees, the shade. That will also help with the heat. It'll initially shade the alleyway in those first obvious adjacent parking spaces, but as the tree grows, it will help that over time. So I think it will also help with the heat island effect that was brought up earlier too.
And then the last thing would be staff would request that the CA is not issued until until the revised plan comes in and these 2 have been approved by staff, just so everybody understands. And so I think something was brought up, if they can't work things out with staff and we have to come back to the committee, we will be sending notices out again because that's really our only choice.
Yeah.
So the neighborhood would be notified within 150 feet.
I think that's a great plan.
So that means you've captured it, right?
We did.
Okay. Then I'm ready to move it.
Okay.
So I believe you were wanting to make a motion and include the conditions that were just discussed that deal with removing of that curb cut in southwest and extending the landscaping minimum 5 foot across that, keeping the same species and the same spacing, and that the CA is not going to be issued until the revised site plan with this has been worked out with staff.
Correct.
Okay. I believe that's what I heard you say in your motion?
It is correct.
Okay. So we just now need
It's all done, Laura.
oh my goodness, how did you guys do that?
because
I was
he was ahead of
writing.
you.
Mariana seconded
What
very
you don't
quickly.
get to see, he had all this set up. It was just waiting for the motion to get right.
Thank you.
Okay. The item B is DTCA-24-00039 at 804 Southwest 2nd Street. And Laura,
Let me change
Yeah, go
my
ahead.
screen. So I'm going to go through the slides, and luckily Google Earth had been out there recently, and that is helping me so much. So this, you can see where Oklahoma City Boulevard is in relationship to this site. I mean, it's just half a block off, and it is immediately west of Ozarka Water, which is like the biggest building in that whole area. This is the building that they're requesting the demolition on, and you can see masonry building. One thing that you will notice in the engineering report that was included, it talked about a gabled roof was put on, and so that's what this is. It originally was a flat roof, and they left that structure on, and they built this over the top of it. And so then this is looking back the other way at the other end of that, and you can see they obviously are having some issues on the inside because they have a tarp on it. And then this is the east facade. And then this is looking from half a block away, zooming in on the back of it. So it's both sides of this that have that brick front. And then this is looking south down Chartel. The subject site's on the right. On the left is Ozarka. And this is looking back west down 2nd. You can see the subject site here on the left. And then this is looking east. The subject site is here on the right. And so across to the east, you have Ozarka. The one thing I will point out is it's been a few years ago, but 2nd Street here in front of Ozarka was actually closed and vacated because they were having trouble getting their vehicles in and out, and they maneuver in here. Although it's still paved and it looks like it's a street, and I'm sure people still drive through there. And then this is across to the north. There's like a gravel parking lot, and then there's a brewery in this blue-purple building that that opened a few years ago. Then the subject site is to the left of this, and this is the rest of the buildings that are going westward down that block that is also owned by the applicant. And then behind the buildings, which are, as I showed you earlier, it's currently a vacant that is also owned by the same owner. And so let me go back to, we'll let it land right there. So you received by email yesterday some correspondence that I received from the owner applicant, Mr. Vineyard, and he had included the estimate, which had also been in that engineering report. So in the staff report, I included information about in 2012, this area was surveyed, and this building was included as contributing to a potential industrial district. That district has not been formed, but we have some really interesting buildings down in this area. And most people don't even realize this is in a design district. And so this building was constructed in 1940. 1949 Sanborn maps, which we really love researching in our office, shows this in 1949 as a beer warehouse. So I included the guidelines, which are several pages, and you're used to seeing those as I keep turning my page, as well as the purpose and intent of the DTCA D2 district. So there are some of the items from the criteria that I included for discussion, because not all of them are applicable. One deals with design, form, and urban character. When you look at this building, it has some really interesting features. One would be the curved, I call it the sign band, where it says vineyard. Normally, we end up with these square detailing around that. Well, this one is curved, which is kind of unique, because I don't think I've worked with a building that had that. You have the arches over the windows. It has a soldier course that goes around the top of those. There's also the cast stone detailing up across the top by the parapet. The building is smaller than what would be permitted. As you know, we have a minimum 2-story or 30 feet in height. It's probably approximately only 15 foot tall, but it doesn't exceed our setback because it appears to be right on the property line. Staff believes that this building is both an historic resource, which is defined as sites, districts, structures, buildings, or monuments that represent important facets of history in the locality, state, or nation. Places where significant or historic events occurred, places associated with a significant personality or group important to the past, and an historic resource defined in the municipal code as districts, structures, buildings, monuments, sites, and landscaping that possess significant local interest or significant artistic merit, or which are particularly representative of their class or period, or represent significant achievements in architecture, engineering, technology, design, or scientific research and development. This proposed industrial district relates to the development of the railroads and their impact on the growth and development of Oklahoma. And you probably are aware that there used to be a lot of railroad tracks downtown, and we have ended up with some interesting shapes of property because of some of the tracks being removed. And in this particular area, as I mentioned earlier, this property is eligible as a contributing property under criterion A, which is commerce, transportation, and industry, and C, architecture. The period of significance is from 1898 to 1955, so it has 57 years. And so if you want more information about that area and what buildings are eligible, just let me know. I included the map and marked the location of this building, just so you could see it on there. There are 12 properties proposed in the district, and 9 of those are contributing. And to me, that is a high percentage contributing, because even with Automobile Alley, which is a phenomenal historic district, there was a significant number of buildings that were not contributing. Don't know percentage-wise, but this, to me, is a high percentage which are contributing. Structural integrity. I referenced the structural inspection report that the applicant provided from 2022 that I included in your staff report, prepared by Hall Engineering. The final recommendation from the report addressed repairs to the building, in addition to the need to monitor the external wall positions over time. A concern was expressed in the report about the condition of the original flat roof, and states, the potential for collapse represents a human safety issue. The final recommendations include an item to remove the original flat roof, and also an estimate for repairing the building of right about $400,000. The committee may consider any of the demolition criteria as well as the purpose and intent statements in their decision. And once again, staff believes this is an historic and architectural resource, as we described previously. There were pictures that were provided in that engineering report that were showing how some of the supports for the original flat roof had literally come off on the sides and are kind of hanging there. And that information is added to by the owner's correspondence that I sent you yesterday. And I have copies of that if anybody needs to actually see that, because they want to refer to something in that. So this is one of those that we typically do when we have a request to demolish a structure that we feel is a historic resource, where we've given you a couple of options. One is, if the committee determines that this structure is an historic resource and an architectural resource, and the structure does not present an imminent threat to public health and safety, or that the proposed or anticipated future development does not outweigh the loss of these structures, you could deny the application. If the committee determines this structure is not a historic resource or architectural resource, that the structure poses an imminent threat to public health and safety, or that the proposed or anticipated future development outweighs the loss of it, you could recommend approval. You could also tweak some of those words. For example, you might say it is a historic resource, but we feel that the structure poses an imminent threat. So we have phrases, and I can help you put those together if you would like to make that motion. Sometimes there's so many options, it's kind of hard for us to include all of them in the staff report. The owners are here. And I believe, did you just want to, if you did you just want to come up if they had questions?
If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
And so this is Roy Vineyard.
Hello, Rory.
I'd say, Roy, thank you so much for your patience as there's the big item in front of you.
It's interesting.
If you could, I'm an architect. I've loved your building probably for the last 15 years. You just didn't know it. Could you tell me what you currently use that building for?
What we would use it for?
What are you using it for currently?
I'm a little hard of hearing.
Yeah, sure. What are you using the building for currently?
It's nothing in there now. It's vacant. I was afraid we had somebody a few years back, but I moved them out because I was afraid it was going to have a problem.
Is there any plan for the building if it is demolished?
Not right now. We've got the whole block there, and there's 3 other buildings that we have taken steps to preserve. And we've talked to some developers, and we've had some development start, and unfortunately they fell through, as the last one did. And so in the meantime, while we're looking for developers, we're just going to try to make this stabilize. And I think actually it'll probably add to the property because they've all going to take this down.
Mm-hmm.
So far, the ones we've talked to.
So, and I just want to clarify, you own that entire half block, correct?
Both on 2nd and 3rd Street, we own both sides, the whole block.
2nd and 3rd, okay. We previously had an application that crashed and burned for the southwest corner of that, where you look at this really fabulous building. You look at it and you don't realize there's no roof on it until you look at the aerial. And so we're really, really hopeful that they end up with someone else who wants to come in and preserve that and work on it. And so just to let you know.
I come from the standpoint, there's a couple of things that I think of whenever I look at your proposal. One is that I love the fabric of the building. I would love to see it stay. That would be my point. I realize you have a structural engineer that said it's dangerous. Dangerous and demolition are 2 wide ends of the spectrum, and I'm curious, in an interim, could it be made safe without the extensive cost? Because it seems to me like the loading of the roof with that secondary system that's been put on top, the sloped roof, that's been a contributing factor to the building not being able to handle the load. I feel like that, it seems like that may be playing a part. Historically, we don't like to demolish buildings unless we know what's going back. And there's been precedent that we've even stated, we're not going to allow something to be demolished because there was not a plan in place for what was going to happen next. So that's the second item. But they both go back to the structural engineer has said it's dangerous. I think that needs to be taken very seriously. When you're talking about health, safety, and welfare, that's where we jump up very quickly. My feeling when I look at your building, I like it enough that I would love to see it stabilized initially until we can determine what would happen if the roof came off, and could that building be repurposed. There are a lot of buildings that were in, I think of the Marion Hotel, that I thought there's no way anybody's going to ever develop that, and then it becomes a jewel. Is there any willingness to make it just stable until there's enough information to know what a next step? So you're not demolishing it without a plan. And if somebody was to come in and say, hey, we think this building is fantastic, that maybe they would be willing to help subsidize the repair costs.
I think what we'd run into, you can see the wall here on that east side, the cracks, that wall is actually bulging. And that was doing that before they did the roof on top. That's been there for a while. The engineer, he really addressed where those joists are coming apart, falling off the wall and thing. And I really feel like it's a Pandora's box. Once we start trying to stabilize it, there's going to be no end in sight. This wall will probably have to be rebuilt. Now, I'm a produce guy. I'm not an engineer. But the more we get into it, and then the back part of it's the same way, it's coming apart like that. I just don't think and then so structurally, I think we would just keep going down a hole that was never stopped. And the bid we have is just for the roof. It's not for anything else on the walls or anything like that. That's just probably half of what we'd have to spend. The whole plan going forward, we've had like four different presentations to us that were really animated, really made that block look like a real center, like an entertainment center. And they all pretty much did away with this building because it's going to put like parking and maybe some condos in there and things. And we got 3 other buildings on that site that look a lot better than this building that we have taken steps to preserve. We've got them watertight. We've got the stuff. We're putting utilities back in them. And we think something's got to bring people across the boulevard and get that whole area started developing. And we think we can do it with this block here. The last people we had doing this, and they worked maybe 3 years on it, did a lot of environmental studies, engineering studies, that talked to you about putting
The building on the opposite corner.
I was going to make a 2-story building out of the one on 3rd Street. And,
Yeah, I was very excited about that project.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that
and
didn't
one reason
happen.
we haven't done anything yet, because they were going to take over the first of the year, but then they fell through. They had a lot of financial problems. So now we're just trying to make the whole block really attractive to some good investors and developers.
So you can see this next building down the way is also a brick building that they have. I don't have a good picture of that one. And then the building that's on the other side of that on the corner has this curved, angly part, which is on the alley, I think, that where the tracks used to go through there. And then that big one that I was showing. So what I'm referring to is there's a brick building this one here, and then this one on the corner, which to me is also a really cool one, and then this big, huge one, and then the 2-story addition on it. So there are still some buildings which, to me, also are contributing on this half block. As he was saying, he feels those are in better shape than this current one.
We've actually put new roofs on there to make them watertight, and then the other building there with the roof is gone was when we bought that. We bought that with the idea of just taking it all down many years ago and building our own new produce company in there. And we actually moved up on 36 in Lincoln where AWG used to be. Perfect place for us. So then after a few years, we discovered that these old buildings were the most valuable part. So we started taking steps to preserve them and keep them where they are.
And have you started the process of trying to do an MPS Part 1 application for these to have you started the process of talking to Historic Preservation Office about listing these as historic properties? Because you can get tax credits for renovating them if they are eligible. And so a 40% discount to the full development is available to you if you were to pursue those tax credits. Have you started that process?
You know, and I'm not real sure, my daughter had done some of that, and I don't know, Vivian, if you're up on
I
that?
don't believe so, unless the people who are going to develop the opposite corner started doing that.
I may have you come up to the mic, please. Thank
We're
you.
getting feedback, and I don't know what's causing it,
Yeah.
so sorry about that.
You're okay.
I'm Vivian. I'm Roy's daughter or granddaughter. I was saying I don't believe so. I haven't seen anything to the effect that they've started to apply for that. I would think the only building that maybe they applied for was the one on the opposite corner on 3rd Street that they were originally going to be in phase 1 of development. For this one, I think this was further down the road in that development project, so I really doubt that they started doing that. But they also weren't going to utilize this building in that way, so I don't think that they would have.
We have not seen a National Register nominations for any property in Oklahoma City come through our office, and we haven't seen a National Register nomination for any of these properties. Typically, SHPO staff reaches out to me if they're communicating with a property owner about tax credits, that sort of thing, and I haven't had any of those conversations. That's not to say someone didn't look into it, but to my knowledge, nothing formal has been pursued.
And you might recall that on 3rd Street, you all approved, was that a couple of years ago, directly across from Ozarka, a project that was for Strawberry Fields, where they were going to, do you remember that? They were renovating some buildings, one piece they were tearing out, and one of them was 2 stories where they were going to have residential up, and nothing has happened with that one yet. But we have additional buildings in that area that they were saying they have been approached, so hopefully there's people looking in this neighborhood to be able to do some exciting things.
I keep going back to the health, safety, and welfare as well. That's what originally caught my attention, was when I read through the Hall's engineering report about it being a collapsing hazard to those within the building. That's a big concern for me, for the building. I am very intrigued with the idea of just removing the roof and preserving the walls, as the architects were kind of dabbling in. Because this is also one of my favorite building faces in all of downtown. I love the arches and the logo and the windows. It's very beautiful. So it would be sad to see it go.
We will too.
Yeah. But I don't have any further questions, if anybody else from the panel does.
I would just like to see, I know that your engineer has said, hey, it's imminently dangerous to stay. I would love to hear from the engineer, if the roof was not there, would there be a way to stabilize it temporarily so that if you were going to pursue some kind of development, that the development could come back and state whether or not it would use this structure? And then you don't have to tear it down yet, and we can actually act on something that has an end result rather than potentially an open lot. I think we're always better when we can see what is the big goal, and it doesn't have to be a finalized goal, it just needs to be an indication of a direction. Would you be willing to talk to your structural engineer about, if the roof was removed, would there be a way to make it just safe at the least cost possible?
Yeah, you know, I think the 400,000 is just barely starting to get it safe. It's because with the one that, the other building here, where we had to take that roof off, we took it off because we want to have the options to do whatever the developers want to do. But we had to go back and brace that also, because the internal skeleton is not designed to withstand the weather without a roof on it. And we had to go back and do some more bracing to stable that all up, because it was wiggling and starting to tear the bricks off the wall and stuff. So we're in tune to doing what you're talking about, and we've taken steps like that. But this one, you know, I can't see it. That's 4,000, just 100,000, just barely cracking the, just barely starting that. And that's got to be done. And in my opinion, we're just going to be pouring a lot of money down someplace that's not going to ever come back.
But I argue that if you were to build that wall today, it would cost you $3 million in heavy masonry. So $400,000 to save $3 million to a future developer is a cost-benefit analysis that is valuable. And this historic fabric does have value to who we are as Oklahoma Cityans. So I have worked on 9 historic preservation projects, getting tax credits. I see a potential path forward to utilizing this existing shell in a way that could be an asset to a future developer. I like Tony's recommendation of let's get it in writing from the structural engineer on how they would propose a shoring system temporarily, and then we can make a determination from that. I think you bought this building because it was beautiful, and it is beautiful, and I think there's still some value in this. I mean, I had an office in a building today that is 5 stories tall that had holes in the existing wood floors from the basement up to the roof. And it was a terrifying place to be, and we brought it back to life. And so I know that there's value in this structure.
And then, of course, we got the street people we have to keep out there all the time.
Can I ask you to come closer to the microphone so that when
sorry.
we listen back to the meeting,
I was getting where I could hear,
thank
not
you.
y'all. The street people, you know, that's a constant battle for 30 years down there and stuff. And I'm afraid they're going to get in there and we're going to have a fire, we're going to have a cave in on them or something like that. Because I go down there quite a bit now, but I can't guarantee I'll keep them out.
But if we follow Tony's advice, which is remove the wood roof, remove the extra roof on top, and only have the perimeter walls, if a fire starts in there, there's nothing to catch on fire and therefore collapse. Today, a vagrant gets in there, catches the roof on fire, the whole building is going to collapse, without a doubt. We've seen it on 5th and Chartel, on some projects, right? This is, so if we remove the flammable materials and temporarily shore the exterior walls, I think there is a path to providing long-term safety for Oklahoma Cityans and preserving the fabric of the building that's there.
And in that instance, if there's no roof, there's really no desire to get inside. And there's nothing there to protect them from the elements. I think we're just trying to see what would the structural engineer say as the very minimum needed for the envelope to be shored. And that would allow us to then make a ruling on your behalf.
So the 400,000 that's an accepted, we accept that as being a starting point?
Well, the 400,000 is you're repairing the existing roof that is there in place. What we're saying is you don't even
Well,
have
how
to
much demolition would be for the roof?
Demo off the
Stabilizing the shell.
upper roof, and then what does it take to shore the masonry walls to where they can stand in place? And at that point, the interior roof, contingent upon your structural engineer saying it could come out if it's not doing what, you know, so you're not actually building something back yet. You're just stabilizing what's there. And if your structural engineer would reach out to staff, they would be able to get the comments of what we're asking, and then, you know, just a simple letter that would say, this is the minimum standard in order for that envelope to be shored and secured.
Well, see if
I
we can
think
get
that's a
someone
great
to do it.
approach, Tony.
So are we continuing, are we making a recommendation of, okay, that's
I don't know what path do you all want to go down, or does the motion maker want to make, or is there a specific time-sensitive question that you wanted to ask, or?
Well, could it be done very quickly? Could that letter be provided to staff?
Probably.
Okay.
Do
Could
you
it
have
be?
a target number, amount of money we could spend on doing this
Oh,
before we
no,
make us?
for a letter, we're just trying to see what the letter says is what's required. It's not really so much about dollars, it's about effort. We have an extra week, right? So when would you need a letter for us to continue?
Beginning of that first week of September,
First-
just like I mentioned for the last
Okay.
case, because it's not like I have to totally rewrite something. And I know somewhere, either the last week of August, first week of September, we got a holiday coming in, and I lose track of when that's going to be, but, so I could give them a few weeks.
Yeah,
be
what
able to get
what
that.
you would have to tell your structural engineer is, if they're able to get you a letter by September 1st, then that would be, we would be on the next agenda. But if you would want to get the letter after that, we would do it in the October meeting. And at that point, we would be continued to the October meeting.
And I don't know. I know we don't want to wait till it starts snowing and
No,
more stuff like this.
100% agree. So the quicker the better, but I would say, I think that to be able to get into your structural engineer's schedule and have them do the information, provide you the information, we would probably be looking for you submitting sometime in late September, and we would be then providing, we would be seeing this again in October.
So that's like 2 weeks. I mean, this is the middle of August now.
Right, but I'm saying if your engineer needed longer than just 2 weeks.
I don't know.
If he agrees, I'm thinking, go ahead and just continue it for 1 month, and if he can't get it, we can, at that meeting, we can
Done.
continue it. But don't start out continue it 2 months, because they might be able to get that quickly. Okay. And the specific wording, because I'll be sending an email today, if we all agree to this, in it, to say that this is the information that you're wanting to be provided from the structural engineer, specifically.
We want an understanding of what would be required to make the envelope, specifically the perimeter masonry envelope, safe and secure. With the assumption that the upper roof that is loading would be removed. Yeah, potentially, but it's at least the second, but potentially both roofs be removed. I think that's the structural engineer's job to tell us what needs to be done to make this safe and secure. And the structural engineer might say, if you remove both roofs and you do this around the perimeter, your structure is safe, and then you can go pursue development, and somebody can potentially be able to use that fabric.
So it's going to be, what you're saying, will probably cost at least $200,000. Is that fair or guess?
I just don't know, but I know John Evans very well.
Turn around, we developed the whole property and they just tear it down.
Right. I know John Evans, who you got an original quote for. He would be able to tell you that number.
Okay.
Is that sufficient for a motion?
Thank you,
I make a motion
that you just stated.
that I just stated.
Second.
And we're talking about continuing it until the September 19th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And we will move on to number 7, which is other business, which we have none. Number 8, communications.
If you have any questions, the first one is greenhouse that they put in it. John Rex, that was involved with OU. As staff, I'm just glad that we have approval for that project. School has started, and they're going to be using it for the kids. you can see it if you drive by. And they've announced their grand opening out there. Signs, as always. And another exciting thing is that the old Mercedes dealership, the last tenant is moving in, so it's on here for a new door. So it took them a while to get that building's pretty big. It took them a while to get that building full of tenants, and now it's totally full, and that's great. And other than that, if you have any questions, you can let me know, and now I'm going to morph into comments from staff. We do have items on the agenda for what will be called next month the Downtown Design Commission. And I'm going to stumble over that for quite a while. So it's the DDC. The Committee Commission Consolidation Ordinance becomes effective on August the 30th. And let me say as staff that for those of you who, for various reasons, we now know you won't be continuing with us in September because unfortunately you don't qualify for any of the seats, Gary. Let me say that I enjoyed working with you. We might disagree on things. It doesn't matter. I know where you're coming from. And I will miss you, but you know how to get a hold of me. And hopefully people are starting to hear. I would assume if you're not term limited out, because some of you aren't, we're going to see you next month. Okay? I know that the mayor's office is currently working on filling seats. This commission will now have 9 members. We currently have 1 vacancy. We're losing Gary. So I'm anticipating we're going to have some new faces here next month.
I'll just add, you all are absorbing Bricktown, so a couple of those new spots are specific to Bricktown, and then all of our requirements that have to do with being an owner, a tenant, et cetera, will now include, in addition to the downtown area, Bricktown.
Well, actually, we didn't have that requirement before for owners and tenants.
That's true. Urban
That
Design.
was Bricktown.
Urban Design has that, yeah. We are planning on not doing a full commission committee training this year for everybody. What we are anticipating doing is a more targeted training for each of these newly formed committees to talk specifically about the areas that you're absorbing. We might rent a van and take a field trip, get out and see the new areas that you'll be covering, but get everybody familiar with the Bricktown guidelines for this body, and then similarly for Urban Design Commission, they're absorbing other districts as well. So as Laura said, unless you hear otherwise, please keep us on your calendar. Please plan on continuing to attend and to participate, and we'll be in touch with everybody, individually as we hear things. If you have questions, feel free to contact us. Feel free to contact the mayor's office about future positions and that sort of thing. So, and I echo, this is such a great body. We appreciate so much each and every one of you. You guys come prepared and engaged and are so kind to every applicant that walks in. So we just really appreciate all the work that you guys do every month.
And you will also start seeing my coworker, Michael Philbrick, on Bricktown cases. Yes, we're cross-training each other, but he is the expert on Bricktown. I'm the expert on Scenic River. So we're going to be going to each other's meetings. And so, as always, if you have questions, just reach out. But we do have we have at least 2 items on next month's agenda. One will have an issue with a committee/commission member, so we're going to need to make sure we have quorum +1. Quorum is based on the number of filled positions. So if we still have some vacancies, it's not going to be based on 9 if we have multiple vacancies. So that's the good thing. So just keep that in mind. So Gary, yes, you can remove us from your calendar now.
So before we move on, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to serve on this board. When Mayor Hope first called me and said, I need you to finish the term for Nathaniel, who was leaving, I kind of laughed because he says, you know, I don't know anything about any of this stuff. He goes, yeah, but I thought you're the government affairs director for realtors. I said, yes, I am, but I know nothing about real estate. And so I've learned a lot over the years, and I just want to thank the staff. You guys do an outstanding job preparing us. I serve on some other boards, and I can say that you guys are an excellent team and do a great job supporting us. And while I regret no longer being able to serve, I want to thank you for the opportunity. So thank you.
Appreciate that. So now you can read the revised little blurby at the bottom of the agenda, or I can, no problem. The Downtown Design Review Committee will become the Downtown Design Commission on August 30th, 2024. The next regular commission meeting, just our times and when we have meetings is not changing at all. It's remaining the same, so your schedule's fine. Is Thursday, September 19th, 2024. New applications were to be submitted to staff a couple of days ago by 4 o'clock on August the 13th. Revisions and information on continued projects are to be submitted by August 20th, or as we've agreed upon in the meeting. I'm just going to add that since we did that one. So now you can
Okay.
say we are.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.